Technology has certainly made bill paying easier, but it's also made it more expensive. You can now pay your regular invoices by credit card, direct debit or internet banking, but you're likely to incur some pretty hefty surcharges for each transaction. So what is the best way to minimise those charges? Here with answers is Today consumer expert Jodie White. Good morning, Jodie.
Morning, Helen.
Now, most of us probably don't even know that there are cheap ways and expensive ways of paying our bills.
I think this is where the trap comes into play a bit with paying these bills. We've really latched on to all of the convenience side of things in terms of having direct debits and phone banking and internet banking, those types of things, but I'm not really sure that we entirely understand what the costs are associated with that. And also too, if our current accounts now, current banking institution is the right one now that we've perhaps changed our method of paying these bills.
So let's start with the most expensive ways to pay your bills.
Right, well I think credit cards are the most expensive way because...
See, this amazes me and terrifies me. I mean, many of us, as you would know, pay our bills by credit card because we either get loyalty, agreements or points and things like that. But now you're saying it's expensive.
Well,
why?
I think you've got to weigh it up because a lot of these merchants put a surcharge on top of this. So that Telstra, for instance, if you pay your bill by credit card, they'll put a percentage on top of the bill, and depending on the amount as to how much the percentage is. You've also, if you don't pay your bill in time, which a lot of us do, and let's face it, it's Christmas time, then you'll have your extra charges on top of that, your interest rates on top of your credit card, and also you have to pay for your credit card, most credit cards anyway. So yeah, that definitely...
credit card's an expensive way.
That's
what else?
Right. Over-the-counter banking, going in and paying your bills in branches can be anywhere between about $0 and $5 per transaction, depending on which institution you're with, and that's why I think.
Don't you also reckon a lot of people think, oh well, I'll just pop in and pay it over the counter. It'll be much cheaper and it'll save me postage and all that. But you're saying it's not.
Well, that's right, Helen. And I think what you've got to do as a consumer is really understand how you pay your bills and how you bank, because you may have changed the way you're doing things, and your current account may not be supporting your method of bill payment. So I think the keys really are to whiz off there and have a bit of a think, have a look at your bills and think, wow, that's interesting. I've done 10 direct debits, or I'm sort of doing a lot of internet banking. And once you understand what sort of bill payer you are, you can then understand the fees, and that may mean that you've got to change your account or even your bank full stop.
You mentioned Telstra. Now, do they say clearly on their bill, we're going to charge you tiny extra percentage if you pay by credit card?
Yes, it's quite clear, and certainly over phone banking they do explain to you that what their terms and conditions are. And I think too that just with direct debits, if I could just make a quick point.
I was just going to ask you, what are the
that.
cheapest ways to pay your bills?
Well, just the reason Telstra sort of brought me around to that point, but with direct debit, I think it's a very good way of paying your bills, especially if you can't get to a branch or you can't have access to ATM, or if you live in rural areas, or perhaps even you're disabled, or like me, that's a little bit late to look at...
organised like many of us.
Have a look at that date and you think, right, I'll get around to that one. And so it's a really good idea because you can set a date on that and the funds come straight out of your account, and so you avoid paying late fees as well. So I think that's a really good way.
Okay, so it might take a little bit of extra time to set up initially, but it's really the cheapest way, you reckon?
Yeah, and it's quite responsible bill paying, and you'll find that it's cheaper for you because you won't be lapsing into those expenses that are incurred as a result of late payment. Okay,
now you can see I obviously don't direct debit because I'm going to ask, for people like my mum who doesn't have a computer, doesn't want to know about the internet, unfortunately. I mean, what's the best way for them to pay bills cheaply?
It's interesting you should say that, because I was just actually chatting to my mother about this yesterday, and she would be a direct debit person because she has a set amount of things to pay at the end of every month. So the amount doesn't change, so she can do that. But I tell you what else she was talking about. She actually has little cards that are supplied by Telstra or the electricity company or the water company, and you can apply for these in the post office, and she can go in at any time and just pay money off these cards as she feels free to. So when the bill comes, it's actually been reduced quite a bit. So that's a good way of paying too.
So you are saying internet banking, direct debit, these things will actually save you a couple of dollars as you're paying off your bills?
Yes, you've got to understand the fees associated with it. Once you've established what type of bill payer you are, you could probably save yourself hundreds.
Terrific, Jodie. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Helen.
Jodie White, our consumer expert. It's now back to Richard.